Hello, folks. This is Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today. And I want to take an opportunity to speak with a special guest. You may not have remembered this back in March. There was a very unique story that came out and speaking about Baltimore, speaking about students, speaking about the failure of our education system, and perhaps even more. And when I read this story, because I missed it when it first came out, I think most of us did, I decided I need to reach out. This was in Baltimore, and I happen to know someone in Baltimore. In fact, I know Pastor Shannon Wright. She is the former candidate for the mayor's position in Baltimore. She is a good friend, and I hope that you're going to take some time to speak with her, listen to her as she speaks with me about this important issue. Hello, Shannon. How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. And I'm happy to have you on today. I know we don't have a lot of time. You have a busy schedule. You have the morning show that you do. Is that right?
Yes, my husband and I co-host a morning show, and we're pretty active in the community with regards to education and some other things. So yeah, it's a lot at the moment, but it's all good.
Well, I know you're very involved. You've been involved with the Maryland, the Republican Party. You've been very active with that. You run for the mayor's position in your city. So I'm not surprised that you're very aware about education. Now, just to mention this was on March 1st of 2021. There was an article that came out. I believe it was WBFF is the station. And
yes.
And the article is city student passes 3 classes in 4 years, ranks near the top half of class with a 0.13 GPA. I want to say it again, a 0.13 GPA. And he's in the top 40% of his class. And he has to redo 9th grade after 4 years. This is an abomination of our education system. And this happened in Baltimore. And I have to ask, have you heard about things like this before? Is this common?
So this has happened before, but let me go back. Baltimore City's public education system has been broken for some years. I would even say a couple of generations at this point. We're that district that after the holiday recess, when the schools are supposed to open in January, the schools can't open because, oops, it's cold, it's winter, and the schools don't have heat. Or, we're going back to school, but oops, it's hot. Schools have to close early because they don't have air conditioning. So this has been an ongoing problem due to mismanagement of the resources that the state provides. And right now, it's just really kind of coming to a head. This specific student was kind of the case that they used to cite the problem in the city. Mm-hmm. But there was a report, and I should have thought to try and send this to you beforehand, an internal investigation done by the Board of Education where they found several, as they call them, ghost students on the rolls in Baltimore City. And I had an opportunity to read the report, and it's about 5 pages of smoke and mirrors. But the one line, or the one couple of lines, the section that really stood out to me was they found that multiple students had been registered for classes with teachers where the classes didn't exist. And then when the students didn't show up, they weren't withdrawn from the classes. And I read that and I said, so are you trying to shift the blame, saying that the students registered for the classes and then didn't show up or withdraw? But how do you register for a class that doesn't exist? So when you unpack the report and you just look at that one statement, students were registered for classes that didn't exist. Then the students didn't show up and they weren't withdrawn from the classes.
It doesn't make any sense. That the whole thing doesn't make any sense. It's, well, you can't get in trouble because the class doesn't exist, but You can't report that there's a problem because there's no students and there's no class. It just passes, and someone's getting paid throughout this process, I'm imagining.
So during this whole time that the investigation has been going on, which has been like a year and a half, honestly, the principal who was in charge of all the academic affairs in that building was still on the payroll. She received a salary, even though she was removed from actively being the principal. She received a salary for 17 months. And then at the end of that, was allowed to retire with full benefits. Now, the only reason only two reasons you would cover up like that. And by what I mean by covering up is knowing there's a problem, knowing there's an internal investigation, knowing that these people had to at least be aware of it if they did not orchestrate it, and you still allow them to cash a check and retire with benefits, is because you are hoping that they will keep their mouth shut about how far and wide the problem reaches, and your awareness of the problem and culpability in it. Because other than that, unless you related to them, I'm not understanding why, if you know this school is under investigation and you know this principal is being looked at, why you allow them to stay on full salary and then roll that into full retirement with full benefits. How does that work?
It sounds like it's a cover-up. It sounds like they're trying to hide, obfuscate what's going on. And I think this is a big deal because students are going back to school now. We had a problem in March. This is widespread. As I said, this student was just one of hundreds of students at and it was the Augusta Fells Savage Institute of Visual Arts.
Yes. Now, the interesting thing is, in Baltimore, let's say it's $16,000, depending on the criteria of the student, $16,000 at the state that the city gets per student. Now let's round that down for simple math. Let's round that down to 15,000. If you have 100 students at $15,000, what's that number?
Oh, the numbers get large fast.
So 15,000, that's 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Now, if this has been happening for the last, let's say, 5 years, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's $7.5 million.
Yeah.
And that's at one school.
How many schools are in Baltimore?
More than 30.
Yeah. Which just a 7 point. So that's like $200 million we're talking about.
Certainly enough to put in proper HVAC, heating and cooling in the buildings.
You would think so. You would certainly think so.
Absolutely.
And if I am not mistaken, Baltimore is 50 years into Democratic leadership at the mayor, city council. It's a controlled Democratic city for over half a century.
Yes.
And this is not a new problem.
No.
Since March, are you aware of them doing anything to fix these problems? Like, one of the problems, as identified in the story in March, was that this one child had gone 272 days absent, and no one ever told his mother.
Mm-hmm.
On top of the fact that he's got a 0.13 GPA for 4 years, he also didn't show up in the most recent year for 272 days.
Yep. Well, it's a 1.3 GPA. I know he didn't show up, but there are other cases. There was another student that was accounted for in all this money that comes into the district, where he was on the record as attending classes and enrolled in the school, and he's been in jail for the last several years. He's never been to that school. He's
been in jail, and they have him as a student enrolled and getting $15,000 for that student every day that he's in jail.
Per year, all this money coming in for a student that was never enrolled and has been in jail for the last several years. So there are hundreds of cases like this. And again, this investigation was focused on one school.
So imagine how it sounds like massive corruption And it sounds like a massive failure to both the students and to the parents. And I think the parent has to be somewhat at blame too. I mean, your kid didn't go to school for 272 days. They have a 1.3 GPA, 0.13. It's so low.
1.3. You had it the right way.
Yeah, it's incredibly low. He's failed and has a ninth grade equivalent after 4 years in high school. Part of that has to be the parent. Now, for the parents' sake, and just to be fair, she stated that, well, she saw her son continue to graduate, and be moved up to 10th grade, to 11th grade, to 12th grade before they finally pulled him back. So she thought, well, he must be passing. I get that. She should be paying more attention, but I think this is a major failure at the school system. That how do we allow this to happen? And let me ask you, is it because of critical race theory? I mean, Baltimore is a predominantly Black, minority, Hispanic community for the last 50 years, if not way longer. Is it because of things like critical race theory, where we see principals segregating students, white versus Black, and this is an offshoot that Black kids have to be promoted no matter what because of critical race theory? Or is it just abysmal failure?
I think it's just an abysmal failure. I don't really honestly think CRT has anything to do with it.
Well, we got to ask. Nowadays, we have to ask, because
you do, because that's a theory that's supposed to be the big umbrella or the big tent that you can sweep a lot of stuff up under. But I don't think that's the case here in Baltimore. I think it's a deliberate abysmal failure. You got to understand, Baltimore is a city where the last mayor is currently in prison.
Mm-hmm.
The mayor before, Mayor Catherine Pugh, in prison. The mayor before her, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, was kind of disgraced when during the Freddie Gray riots, was caught on a hot mic saying, well, just let him burn it down, in terms of folks rioting and all of that. The mayor before that was Sheila Dixon, who had the option of stepping down or having charges, embezzlement charges levied against her. And I will add that she, for 5 years, as a part of her sentence, she couldn't run for office. When that ended in 2020, she almost won the Democratic primary for mayor.
It's kind of like Marion Barry out of DC, got caught.
Well, DC and Baltimore are kind of close.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't understand.
So, but now, so as I said, the former mayor is in prison. One had to resign because of charges. One was disgraced. We've also had, not our current, but a former police commissioner that is now in a halfway house, or he may have finished he went from prison to a halfway house, and I think he's been released now for his own deeds. We have another delegate, Delegate Glenn, who had to step down last year and was indicted. We have a new comptroller, because the comptroller was found to have been business partners with Catherine Pugh, and their business was believed to have been one of the entities that laundered money through the city. So she backed off and stepped back. Nat Oakes was another representative of Baltimore City that had his legal and criminal dealings. This is not new to Baltimore.
That's a shame. It shouldn't. This shouldn't be new to any city anywhere. It's just corrupt. It's a complete failure, and it's destroying our youth. I mean, that's the conclusion I would come to off of this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think any reasonable person would say the same thing. Why is this happening? I mean, this isn't getting national attention. This wasn't a big story anywhere. No one talked about this. Do you have any idea why?
Well, I'm not really sure. Well, okay. So I have to dispute that a little bit.
Okay.
Because it may not have been a big story and made a national splash, but I'm in Maryland and you're in New York.
True. Very true.
So it is going beyond our state. And again, part of the reason why I think it hasn't made more of a splash is because there's been so much corruption and scandal coming out of Baltimore that people are at that place where like, oh, that's Baltimore.
That's a sad way to look at it. It's a very.
I think folks have been really desensitized.
I can't imagine. Well, looking at the list of mayors and the disgrace that they've gone through, perhaps, yeah, maybe I can understand how you can get desensitized to something like this. Has there, with this new, obviously COVID's been a problem, further complicating this. Are you aware of any changes in the education system in Baltimore that has been implemented since March, or are they just going about business as usual?
So that's another part of the problem. The district came up with a reopening plan for the schools, and in their own protocols, which folks said, we're not happy with this is not going to work. They've scrapped them already, and we've been back in school for 1 week. Not only that, the teachers union is even against the Board of Education. We just recently found out that the teachers union had a vote of no confidence against the superintendent and the Board of Education months ago.
Oh,
so it's really interesting to see how far and how deep this cover up and corruption and all of that goes.
It sounds incredibly, this sounds almost like a soap opera, because it just gets worse and there's so many other aspects and more players are involved with all this sordid details. And if it were a movie, a TV show, I'd be kind of interested to watch this. To see this as an American city falling apart it's disheartening in so many ways.
Absolutely.
Is there a solution for this? Because I'm imagining if this is being allowed to happen in Baltimore, what about Chicago? What about Detroit? What about some of the other major cities and even minor cities that are also being overlooked for possibly these same things? I mean, how many of these stories exist?
So I think there are definitely solutions. I think you got to do a couple of things. One, we are right now a fully appointed school board. So we're in a situation where the way the system is set up, it's everybody gets to pass the buck. For example, the state sends in the money goes to the Board of Ed, the mayor appoints the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed picks the superintendent.
So the public's not involved in that?
No.
Oh.
So we have no elected representation on the school board. The only voice at all is in electing the mayor, who appoints the school board. Now, in the next election cycle, the Board of Education will be expanded by 2 folks, and those folks will be elected, which will give us a hybrid system. But we need to move to a fully elected school board. That's one part of a solution. 2, we need to expand the opportunities for charter schools, increase the number of vouchers, and introduce academic savings accounts. All of these things will give the opportunity for the money to follow the student, for the parents to have more of a say in where they want to see their child go to school, and introduce some competition so that the schools are forced to really step up their game and do what they're supposed to do, which is educate the children. It'll force the Board of Ed and the union, the teachers union, to kind of get more on the same page. And I think it'll produce a better work product, which is a well-educated child.
At the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Would school vouchers be an option as well? Would that help perhaps having that?
That is one of the things on that list. Yes.
Okay.
Increasing the charters, adding charters, increasing the amount of vouchers, and introducing academic savings accounts. So charters, vouchers, and academic savings accounts. Those 3 together, combined with a fully elected school board, I think is a way for Baltimore to really be able to take some control back and actually steer the course towards providing an effective, a quality public education for students in the city.
Okay. Now, I know, Shannon, I want to thank you for taking the time. We set this up very quickly. Once I saw the story, I immediately reached out to you. You said, yes, I'll give you some time immediately to talk about it. So I do thank you for that. First, let me mention, what's the best way for people to follow up with you as you talk about this and other issues, and I know you do, what's the best way for them to follow you?
So you can reach out to me at urbanengage.org. Is that .org? Yep, .org. You can reach me on Facebook, Pastor Shannon Wright, or Urban Engagement Initiative on Facebook. Either way that you prefer, we are very responsive. So if you have a question or a concern, please feel free to reach out, sign up for our email updates.
Okay. And I will put that on the screen for everyone to make sure that they're going to be able to see that so they can properly get out and reach you about this, because I think more people should speak about this. The more pressure, the better it is to try and get a change and help our kids, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
I want to ask, is there anything else, either about this or anything, that you'd like to take an opportunity to speak about? Are you running again for another elected office? Is there anything that you want to share with people? I don't know. I ask. So
right now, my focus is really doing some things to turn education around in Baltimore City. I am interested in education beyond Baltimore City. So when you have areas that are economically challenged, the one sure way to ensure the best possible outcome for the future of that area is to make sure you create a quality public school system for the children. When people look at where to move to, or to avoid, or to move out of, they look at the schools, they look at public safety, those two things. They then start to look at real estate. Now, if you've got bad schools and high crime rate, that's going to affect the real estate. Mm-hmm. That's going to affect companies leaving and taking economic opportunities out of the city. So for not just Baltimore, but in all of our cities, you want to really turn our urban areas, our inner cities around, fix the schools, fix the food deserts. You will start to see the crime rates come down, and then really increase the economic opportunities so that companies want to move in and create jobs so that you can get your tax base expanded and do more to improve quality of life. And it becomes a positive cycle as opposed to a negative spiral.
I think that's very important. And that's something that we need more people talking about and looking into, getting that positive spiral up rather than a vortex down.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Shannon, I want to thank you. By the way, say hello to Michael for me.
I will.
I know it was the last minute. I thank you for giving me the opportunity. I want to definitely have you on again soon. We'll talk more about some of the other things in education, not just in Baltimore and Maryland, but the rest of the nation, like critical race theory, some of the new proposals that are being put out there with COVID. We'll talk more about all of that and getting some of your expertise to give more flavor than what I can come up with.
You know what? I appreciate the invitation to be here and share spend some time with you and share some information on what's going on in the city and some solutions. You know, we all see the negative things that have been going on since COVID. We all have seen the negative things that have been going on before COVID. But now it's time to really focus on and be able to visualize and implement solutions. We all know what the problems are. Time to fix it.
Yeah, the problems have been here. They've been here.
This is an opportunity to hit that reset button, though.
The good reset, not the
yes,
not the Canadian
reset for positive, not that other stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, Shannon, I thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I want to thank you, and folks, please do look into her sites. Please do reach out and support as much as you can so we can help our kids, not only in Baltimore, all of Maryland, all of this nation. Be involved with your local school district and community, because if we're not, this is what happens.
Absolutely. We all have a choice. You can be a part of the solution, a part of the problem, or somewhere passive in the middle. But passive at this point, we're beyond that. Folks need to get up, stand up, speak up, and be vocal, especially when children's futures are at stake.
Absolutely.